You're listening to the Coach's Journey podcast, exposing the struggles and celebrating the successes in the life of coaches who are action takers and creating authentic impact in today's world. Whether you're just starting out, expanding your reach, or exploding your impact, you're in the right place right now. Stay tuned and be sure to subscribe to this podcast. Now, here are your hosts of the Coach's Journey podcast. You're listening to the Coach's Journey podcast, exposing the struggles and celebrating the successes in the life of coaches who are action takers and creating authentic impact in today's world. Whether you're just starting out, expanding your reach, or exploding your impact, you're in the right place right now. Stay tuned and be sure to subscribe to this podcast. Now, here are your hosts of the Coach's Journey podcast.
All right. Welcome, coaches. As Sheri would say, hello, Coaches Nation.
Hey, Coaches
We have an awesome
Nation,
topic.
what's up?
What's up, Coaches Nation? How do you say it, Sheri?
I don't even remember now. You totally threw me off.
You say like, what's up, Coaches Nation?
We're back.
Up after you say it.
Yeah, we're back with another amazing episode of the Coach's Journey podcast. I am here, Dr. Sheri Fluellen, with my amazing co-host for today, Danielle Fernandez. And our topic today is critical because if you are in a significant relationship as a coach or aspire to have a significant relationship or with the significant other as a coach, there is the potential for them not to fully understand what we do as coaches or the journey of the coach. And so what happens if there's conflict or there's misunderstandings or expectations are different? That's what we're going to talk a little bit about today. Because Daniel and I are both married and we have some stories. We have
each of our own separate marriages, and we have similar stories. I'm curious to have this conversation with you, Sheri, because we have so many different experiences to bring that are probably the same challenges in different environments. So I'm really curious about where this goes today. But real quick, if you who are watching can think about how you found this podcast, there's someone maybe it's a coach who you have the opportunity to share it with personally on social media or something like that. The only way we can provide this content to more coaches is by word of mouth. And obviously our own marketing, but your word of mouth is a really big part of that. So we would ask that you pay it forward to another coach. If you get a lot out of this podcast, please share it because we really need more positive growth in the world and coaches are going to be the ones to do it. So that's why we're supporting coaches. So this is a topic that so many coaches need support on: their spouse or significant relationship or marriage. What are the effects of coaching on that? And people don't think about this as a thing, but it is a thing. It's really important. It's not just coaching, it's also entrepreneurship, but coaching specifically has some challenges in relationships. So today we're going to share some of our best tips for how you get your spouse on board, how you leverage your spouse's thoughts, expertise, and experience so that they're part of the process, and things not to do with your spouse, right? So things that we've done that are mistakes, big mistakes you can make with your spouse. So let's jump right into it, Sheri. I hope you wrote those 3 down.
I was trying to. So just Daniel, let's just share a little background about our spouses. So there's a little bit of context. What's unique, what's possibly unique is we both actually have entirely entrepreneurial families, meaning that neither myself or my husband or Daniel or his wife are employed by anybody else other than ourselves. But my background, I've been married for 24 years. I always have to think. I've been married for 24 years. My husband and I dated for quite a few years before that. I try not to tell my kids how long we dated because I don't want them to date as early as I did. But we've been married for 24 years, and about 13 years ago, he and I both became entrepreneurs the exact same year. He went from being an employee somewhere to being a real estate agent in July of 2010. And I went from being a psychologist in the Air Force to having my own private practice in December of 2010. So 2010 was a year that rocked our world. We also, we had 3 kids at that time, 3 little itty bitties, and a 4th one on the way. Life was crazy. And what I've noticed from switching from being employed to being an entrepreneur and trying to figure all that stuff out is there is this whole another level of chaos and lack of surety in life
You mean
that
certainty?
happens.
You mean certainty? Yeah.
Yeah. Or surety, I'm not
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so there's a lot of extra stress. Now, I know some people have a spouse that I know coaches that have spouses that are employed, and then they're self-employed and they do the coaching thing. And honestly, that can be kind of a good balance, because then there's some of that certainty, some financial stability there, especially for beginning coaches. But my journey did not have that. And we've been entrepreneurs long enough to where we do have some financial certainty, but there's a lot of unpredictability. But I'll take it every day of the week, because I love the flip side.
Which brings us to the first point. When you're a coach, when you're in entrepreneurship, there's a lot of uncertainty, just because it's different from being in a job where a lot of the structure around how you make money is already figured out. But in entrepreneurship, you have to figure that out for yourself. And if you have a team, figure out for them. And that's a different level, a different context of responsibility. For me, I'll give you a short recap of my history too. I've only known my wife 10 years. We've been married since 2019. And so that's 4 years or so, but it feels like it's been longer because we've gone through so many different experiences together. When I started dating my wife, I had a corporate job, and she was the one who actually encouraged me. I told her what my vision for life was. I wanted to be an entrepreneur, and I wanted to do coaching and stuff. And so when we were long distance for a while, she's like, well, didn't you always want to be an entrepreneur? Like, isn't it time that you quit your job? Because we're long distance, and don't you always, like, this is part of what you wanted in life, right? To have a family, to be an entrepreneur. And I was like, but I can't do it. I can't quit my job. So we spent 2 years long distance. And eventually I decided to do it. And she was able to support me a little bit while I started my coaching career. But what she couldn't do was understand the journey that I was on as an entrepreneur suddenly, and the flailing as a coach in the beginning. And it was pretty hard. We almost broke up that year. And we've been on a long journey since then. And since then, she's also become an entrepreneur. And we've had different businesses. I do work for my wife. We have a coffee company, and I work for her. The coffee company is savebarista.com. And that is a company that we built together. We explored coffee, and she started this company, and I said, like, let me work for you. You be the CEO, and you just tell me what to do. Anything you decide is like binding, and I will have perspective, but I won't overrule you. And so we've been collaborating that way, but it's very clear what the roles are. But then in my business, I brought her in as a CFO of my business to help me figure out finances, because she's way stronger in that area. And she's helped me with other businesses too, like Coaching Mastery Community. And she's really good with finances. So we've kind of worked for each other a little bit in different entrepreneurial ways. We both understand now the journey of entrepreneurship. But there was definitely a time where one of us was entrepreneuring and the other wasn't. She's had jobs since then as well. But the biggest challenge that I think I see with spouses is that understanding the entrepreneurial reality that the coach is in. Like, if you're a coach, there's two really big challenges. One is the challenge of entrepreneurship. That alone is like super hard. So if you find coaching hard because of entrepreneurship, that is like so real. And we talk about the entrepreneurial roller coaster. Me and my wife is like, every day it's like, we should just give up. Oh no. Or we should just like keep on going. It's like every couple of days something happens. You're like, oh my gosh. But the nice thing about the entrepreneurial journey is that you figure out how to manage with insane levels of uncertainty.
Yes.
And that makes you a better coach.
Absolutely.
And the second part of it is uncertainty of coaching, because you feel like you're on the line. So anytime you get a no, you feel rejection, or if you don't have people responding, you take it personally. And that whole taking it personally side of coaching, and you don't have confidence in whether your coaching is going to be good enough. Can I charge money? Like, that's a whole other side of it that definitely impacts your spouse. So there's this two, I would say the entrepreneurial piece and the coaching confidence piece are both like massive sources of uncertainty for you as a coach. And that rubs off on your spouse, and that's your spouse, like, only they want to help you, but they don't know how, because you don't know how. So it gets really complicated. And so they're like, like, what are you doing? This business is different from other businesses. So they don't even understand that. And so it's like, it's really hard at first. We had struggled through communication about, like, what am I doing with my coaching business? And why am I spending all this money on programs that I shouldn't probably be buying, which she was probably right about, being able to communicate is the hardest part.
I love that you broke it down into the complexity of just being an entrepreneur, and then the complexity of coaching in and of itself. Now, I had
striking a chord, and I can tell, like, I'm getting like a little charged up here.
maybe I had the advantage that I was an entrepreneur for 9 years before I became a coaching entrepreneur. I was an
Totally.
entrepreneur. I was a psychologist. I started a private practice and was growing that. So I was still like doing coaching-ish kind of stuff. But as a psychologist, I didn't have the level of marketing and sales that I need now as a coach, because I was billing insurance and I always had a steady flow of clients. And so that wasn't a thing. So as I was building my skills as an entrepreneur, now when I sold that and I was like, I'm going all in on coaching because this is where I feel like I can have a bigger impact and there's more energy for me there and all that sort of stuff. Then there's all of that, like, oh crap, now I need to know how to sell. And now I need to like really track outcomes because it's just, there's a whole level that comes with that I had not experienced yet. So beginner coaches, if you've not had an experience as an entrepreneur yet, and you're kind of doing it all together, oh my gosh, how overwhelming
That's hard.
it can be. And that's exactly why, quite frankly, Coaching Mastery Community exists, because we understand the complexity of all of that. And we see, and we've experienced ourselves, and when we're not in community with other coaches who understand what we're doing and what we're getting, we might have the tendency to, when Daniel's like every other day, we're like, what are we doing? Like that you might actually act on that thought and be like, I give up, I quit, I'm just going to go get a 9 to 5. And if that's not consistent with what you feel called to do, you need support, and your spouse just may not be in the position to support you. I've had 2 to 3 conversations just in the last week with my husband. He's an entrepreneur, like he gets that, but he still doesn't quite get my coaching. And when he looks at the amount of time I spend on coaching-ish activities and the amount of revenue I generate, I'm still not quite at the level I was when I owned a practice. And so he sees that, and his mind is like, well, you just need to find something that's more profitable. But deep down, I know that I'm on the right path, because there is so much growth and change that's happening inside of me. He can't see or recognize because it's in me. And I know that Daniel, you and I have talked about just recently about when we're on this path of growth and we're trying to figure these things out and we're struggling, if it's up with partnership or all of the different things that come with potentially with coaching, there is so much growth that happens that is really not quantifiable. And one of my favorite quotes from Alex Hermosi, who's really, really smart about business, is he says he thinks in decades, not days, months, or years. And that has stuck with me. And I'm like, okay, is what I'm doing right now as a coach, the energy and the work I'm putting in, is that going to benefit me a decade from now? 100%, I believe so. And so I'm sticking with my guns, but while I'm sticking to my guns and doing the things that I feel like are allowing an impact and are growing me internally so I can continue to have a bigger impact, I now have to still manage my husband's slightly like skeptical of like, is this
sounds
really
so familiar?
Yeah. So it is a challenge, and I certainly don't have a perfect way of saying this is how you need to do it, but I am certain of one thing. Well, certain of 2 things. I am certain that you must have these conversations. When you don't have the conversations, there's frustration, resentment can fester, and resentment.
Which conversation specifically, Sheri? I want to be super clear on this.
Yeah, the conversations. Well, whatever conversations are coming up, if you're feeling some energy from your spouse about them not understanding, maybe they're supporting, but more they're supporting is just not saying anything, but they're not actually helping you. Whatever comes up for them or for you, you got to have these conversations. And so the conversations that I have with my husband are going to look different than the ones that you have, Daniel. Then they're probably going to look a little bit different than the ones that our listeners will have. But there needs to be an open communication. So I need to say to my husband, hey, I know you don't fully understand this. I want to be open with you. I'm pretending like he's standing here. That's why I'm looking over there. We're doing the empty chair.
Looking at the door. I'm sure my wife is in the other room hearing what we're saying.
Yeah. that I want to be open with you. I want to be able to have open communication. So if there's things you don't understand or frustrated about, please share them with me. I'm open to that. And when he comes to me with that, I need to not like bite his head off in that conversation.
Yeah, I remember so many conversations with my wife because some like the other third thing, the challenge that you have as a coaching entrepreneur is your own personal communication ability and the conflict with your spouse's own personal communication ability or your significant other, because the ability to talk about it and realize working together is so valuable. Like at the beginning, like we didn't have that trust level that each of us was going to let go of a little bit of control by bringing the other person in. And so like I wanted my independence to pursue my own coaching journey and things. I was spending all this money on stuff, and my wife was like, "What?" But she was my wife at the time, so it was a little easier for me to like, whatever. But eventually we got married, and even before we got married, we started integrating finances more, and so there's an accountability that I needed to have that I didn't yet have internally.
Yes.
And so my wife was like frustrated that we weren't collaborative on money when we were living together, and like if you do make decisions about money when you're not, she was supporting me too at the time. And I was still living in the, like, I have a lot of money for my corporate job mode. And like, I didn't make my own personal development transition over to like, okay, the new reality is I don't have the same level of money and income. I can't make the same trade-off decisions. I can't just buy whatever I want to. And it affects somebody else too, who's working really hard to support me. I didn't have that appreciation of what the dynamics of the relationship were doing to me. We're doing and what I needed to do differently because I hadn't had those like personal development pieces. I hadn't gone through that journey yet. Had I had a coach at the time, big mistake when you make this transition as a coach from corporate to coaching, or when you try to integrate your wife, having a coach can be really helpful. I wish I had a coach earlier in my journey. I wish I had a community like Coaching Master community earlier in my journey. It would have been so much easier to talk to people about these questions or have people tell me things that would be super important for me to know. But over time, it took a long time, like years and years for us to like have this little like, what, you spent money on that conversation, and then like now I'm defensive. And so like even today, like we are so much better. Like right now, like I walk through with my wife all the things I'm thinking of buying because I actually want her input now, as opposed to before. I was like, no, I got this. I'm so independent. I have all the answers. I don't need somebody else telling me what to do, But I actually realized she has a lot of valuable input to me, and the things that I care about in my life are like the same things that I've told her that I care about. She cares about them because I care about them, and she cares about them too on her own. And so when she's telling me like, hey, I'm concerned about this because how do we know it's going to give you the results you want? And then now I have to defend it. I can't just make a whim purchase if I have to defend it and actually make an argument and like really walk through with somebody together to figure it out. Not saying that I didn't make stupid purchases that I had to go get a refund for, which, in all honesty, within the last quarter, I did that once. I made not a huge purchase, but a significantly large enough purchase. You're like, what is this charge? I'm like, let's talk about it later. And then I went and got a refund because I knew that was the wrong thing to buy. I said like, hey, I got a refund. There's a couple of conversations in between too, but.
Oh my gosh, that's funny. So there's two things. The first is communication, which we're talking about. And the second is accountability. Because if you can demonstrate to your spouse that you are accountable to them and to yourself for the goals, that's huge. And one of the things we do at the Coaching Mastery community is we actually have all of our pro members create plans for themselves and really dig in the weeds on how much money do they need to make and how many clients is that? And we get, and just really get clear on that. So that means there is X number of reach outs or conversations or different metrics that you need to have every week. And if you can show your spouse that, hey, I'm actually doing the work to get the results, that is going to be huge. And for them to be able to trust you.
Yeah, I love that, Sheri. You're right. So communication, like extended communication of figuring things out together, super important. The best strategy also is to be collaborative about your business. Let them in, make sure you're on the same page about what the objectives are, help you think through the things you can't see. Yeah. If they can, and bring them along the journey with you. Like make sure you're not taking them by surprise, right? And Absolutely. Number 3, things not to do. Don't do stuff that's going to make them angry.
Let's just leave it at that.
Unless you are totally sure that you can bring them on. Like sometimes I'm like, I know I need to do this thing. She's going to have a question about it, but I know based on what we've talked about and the conversations we have had that I can make that argument. And sometimes I'm wrong and have to get a refund. So
I love that. So if you're listening to this and you can like totally see yourself in these conversations, in these challenges, we would love to invite you into the Coaching Mastery community. You can join the Facebook group for free. Just search for a Coaching Mastery community, but you can also get a huge amount of value, support, and path and leveling up as a coach by our membership, our paid membership. And if that's something that you think, I wonder what that's about, just reach out to us and we'll have that conversation. We appreciate you guys so much with listening to this. And I'll bet you probably haven't heard a podcast in a long time about coaching and marriage all in the same, well, dealing with the coach's marriage, not marital counseling and coaching.
We should do a follow-up podcast on this one too. I think there's so much more to talk about, but
absolutely. So if you have a particular topic you would love for us to also talk about, let us know. Support at coachingmasterycommunity.com. You can reach us there. And until next time, bye.
You're listening to the Coach's Journey Podcast.